Hey, how you doing? Justin here. Welcome back for some more chord exploring. Today we are checking out the C shape. Maybe some of you have already seen the D shape lesson, which is the first of this sort of series. If you've seen that, you probably know what's in store. If you haven't, we're basically going to take a look at our regular C open chord and find lots of different ways of manipulating that chord to make it a little bit more interesting. Stuff that you could use as embellishments or to create a little bit of melodic movement within the chord itself. So let's get to a close-up. Check it out. Okay, so starting off, here's a regular C chord, hoping that you're all familiar with that one by the time you reach this lesson. So let's start off by looking at what happens when we lift our fingers off. So the first finger lifting off, lovely sounding chord. It's called a C major 7th, this chord. Quite a few songs use this as like a movement. There's a famous song that uses C, C major 7, E, E7. Just really nice. C, C major 7. Now, one thing to make sure you're aware of is C major 7 and C7 are different types of chord. They sound very different. This is C major 7. Here's C7. C7 is a bit more, it's a bit kind of a more bluesy, soul-y sort of sound. Major 7 is a little more folky, a little more open. And you can't substitute one for the other. Now, there's technical and theory stuff that we can go into as to what key the chord of C is in and what the associated scale tones will be. But I really think a better approach, 9 times out of 10, is to try it and listen. Use your ears to decide, does it sound good? And if it does sound good, then you keep doing it. And if it doesn't sound good, you stop doing it and don't use it as an embellishment. It's a lot simpler and a lot more musical to approach it that way rather than trying to think of all of the technical theory stuff. So just give it a try. If you've got a C chord and you're thinking like looking for some variations, lift off your first finger and see, does it sound good or does it not? So next finger we can lift off would be the second finger. Really, really nice little variation, this one, particularly if you hammer that second finger down after playing the chord. Now, again, technically, it's not really a sus2 chord because the thinner string would be the third of the chord if you want to get into the technical stuff, so it would be an C add 2 is the technical name. Does it matter? No, and I'd encourage you not to get too concerned with the fancy pants names of stuff. It's just a C chord, you happen to lift off your second finger, sounds cool, or it doesn't sound cool. If it doesn't sound cool, you stop doing it. It really is that simple. And the only other finger we've got to lift off there is the third finger. Now, if we lift it off and leave it off, we end up with an A minor 7 chord, which changes the chord type completely. But if you leave it off just for a bit and hammer it on, for example, it could just be effective. So if you're just lifting it off really quickly, it's not changing the tonality. It's only if you left it off for ages that it would end up sounding like an A minor chord, and then you've kind of essentially changed the chord. So now let's have a look at what we can get away with little finger, which is our spare finger. The first real common one with the C chord is to put your little finger down on the 3rd fret of the thinner string. It is still just a C chord. All that we've done is doubled this open G. So it's the G note there. Still a C chord, it's just a variation. Like here, regular C, we've got an E there and we've got an open E there, so it's doubled that note. If we put little finger down, it's doubling the open 3rd string, the note G. Now, the point of this might seem a little bit weird. Why would you have these 2 variations of the C chord that are very, very similar? A lot of it's to do with a thing called voice leading, which is when you go from one chord to another, how the note on each string is moving. For example, if we have a D chord going to a C chord regular, you can hear this note to the open thinner string. But if we go to this new variation, you can hear now this movement going na, 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 na. And sometimes you'll just find like putting that little finger down just changes the chord in that subtle way that sounds nicer with the melody. Because generally when you're playing, you want to be thinking about your guitar as an accompaniment to somebody singing, so you want to find the nicest chord that fits with those things. So that's why you would experiment with that. And sometimes you might use it in a chord melody approach. If you're playing like, you might have a specific reason why you want to accent that particular note, or it might just be something that you're playing around with. That's fine too. Next common variation for little finger is putting it down on the note D, which is the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Really, really lovely chord. This, you don't have to leave first finger down. If you do that, you can lift it off, leave it down as well. It doesn't really matter. It depends how long you're going to leave it down for, I guess. But this chord is really, really nice. Almost any time you've got a C chord, you can add this little finger. You get this clash between those two notes, but such a nice. Just going for E minor to C, but adding this add 9. It's so much richer than a regular C. I think this is definitely one that you want to be exploring most times. If you've got a regular C chord, try this chord and see if it sounds any better or any more interesting. Little finger, other obvious place would be put it down here, which is the 3rd fret of the 3rd string, and this would be a C7 chord. Okay, there's the root note, there's your C. Now C7 chord commonly goes to F. Okay, so that would be there's a strong pull. C7 is actually the 5th chord in the key of F, if you want to get into the technical stuff. That's the reason it really, really wants to pull that way. But again, sometimes if you've got a regular C, you play a C7 chord, it might sound really cool, or you might play it and go, sounds a bit sour, in which case you just don't keep doing it, rather than thinking about too much of the technical stuff. So that's C7. Other option that we've got for little finger here is the 3rd fret of the 4th string. Now this makes it a C sus4 if you don't play the thinner string. If you do play the thinner string, it's called an add4. Doesn't really matter. Again, it's just this really nice embellishment of here, regular, then the 2nd, and back. Now one other variation that I think is really nice here with the C is actually moving the 3rd finger down to the thicker string and putting little finger where the 3rd finger was. Now technically this is a C/G, a C chord with a G bass note. But what you find is a lot of old school kind of rock and roll uses this C chord instead of this one. You can hear it's a lot fuller in the low end. Very common to do this thing, to play C chord like that and then move all of the fingers down. Little finger flattens down, the other fingers just move down to get an F. That kind of thing. So the C with a G bass going to an F chord or to any other chord, but it's a nice thing. The other common variation doing the same sort of thing is moving the 3rd finger over, which is kind of a common country thing. You'd be picking that note, then picking that note, picking the 5th string, then the 6th string, with a down up in between. Down, down, up, down, down, up, down. Real common kind of a country thing. One more interesting thing about using the C chord here is the way that you can play the C major scale within the chord shape. So we start by putting little finger down on the top note, the G, the 3rd fret thinner string. Then if you lay first finger down, you get that F note, then lift it up to regular C. So now we've got. Then if we add little finger down now on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and stop the pick on that 2nd string, so we don't play the thinner string anymore. So then lift off little finger. So this is the highest note we play. Then lift that off. Now put first finger down here on the note A, which is the second fret of the third string. It might feel a little bit weird to do that, but it's a nice, again, movement here. You see, we can get that whole scale is available there, which becomes a really interesting thing, especially if you're getting into chord melody or being able to kind of create a melody within your part. A lot of songs are built off this idea of having a kind of a static chord but a melody within it. So you might, I'm just making up stuff off the spot, but you might, or I mean, there really is like a gazillion different variations that you could explore once you've got that scale under your fingers and you can manipulate any of those notes. Really, really good fun thing to check out. Just one last thing to show you with the C chord, which I think is kind of fun, is the way that the melody sits within that chord for something like Happy Birthday. So you'd have... Now we're on the G, obviously. C. But you can see there where the scale is kind of intertwined within the chords, and by practicing these different melody or embellishment notes within each of the chord shapes, it really help you be able to get used to the idea of finding a melody within a chord shape, which I think is a really valuable skill. A really important thing when you're getting into chord embellishments and variations is to put them into practice as soon as you can. You really want these things to kind of become automated, to become part of what you might play whenever you play a C chord. That any time you're playing a song and there's a C chord, you might lift off one of the fingers for a little bit of an embellishment. To start off with, you'll have to think about it. You'll have to consciously go, oh, I'm on a C chord, I'm going to try and do these embellishments, try this idea, see what it sounds like. When you've done it enough, it'll just happen. If I'm playing a C chord, all of these variations that we talked about and a bunch more are available. They're options that my hand just might go to. My musical imagination might go, oh, that idea, and then my hand can make it happen. That's what you're aiming for, but that takes practice. And you just want to get into the habit of, whenever you're practicing your repertoire for the next little while, consciously putting them in until they start to happen by themselves. That would be the long-term goal. So 2 sections to your kind of practice. One is focused exploring the chord for like a 5-minute session, and then when you're doing your repertoire practice, when you're practicing songs, deliberately trying to wedge in these variations and embellishments and see if you can get them to become part of the natural way that you play the C chord. Really hope you enjoyed this. Have yourselves a fabulous day, and I'll see you for more very soon. Take care. Bye.